Hello, everyone. And I am so excited that each and every one of you have joined me for the very next installment of LeadHERship Global. We're so excited to welcome you and introduce you to the one and only Kelly Ann Winget. She is a visionary leader in the world of alternative investments and the driving force behind Alternative Wealth Partners. She has a background that is steeped in financial literacy and entrepreneurship. And Kelly Ann has successfully raised, get this, nearly $1 billion in private capital, focusing on providing access to institutional grade investments for a diverse and growing base of investors. Kelly Ann is just absolutely a champion of women, of diverse investments, and of businesses owned by minority groups, owned by women, operated by women, and she leads a firm that champions non-correlated assets across multiple sectors, including oil and gas, private equity, venture investing, and opportunity zones. I am so excited to welcome Kelly Ann Winget to today's program, so all of you have an opportunity to get to know Kelly. She is absolutely a powerhouse leader and someone that I have come to really respect and admire. Kelly Ann, thank you so much for being a part of the LeadHERship Global podcast.
Thank you for having me, Linda. I'm so excited for the conversation.
Thank you. So again, Kelly Ann, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom and insight with us. But first, tell us a little bit about your journey. What's led you to have such passion around helping women and families gain financial stability, financial freedom, and have a sense of financial empowerment?
So I was raised in a house that this was pretty encouraged. Both my parents were investors from early ages. They were flipping apartment complexes in the 70s. So they started businesses, they, sold businesses, they worked in the private sector, public sector. And we were always encouraged from a young age to go after things that were interesting. And I had a pretty money mindset early on. When I turned 15, I wanted my own money and my own freedom as a teenager, and went out and got a job in sales at 15. I started making almost six figures part-time in high school selling car washes. Wow. So I learned the art of the deal very early in my life. And so I had a number of jobs in high school. I was constantly trying to find a way to work wherever I was spending money, so I didn't have to spend the money, I could get things for free, right? And when I graduated high school, I tried the college route, but I couldn't convince myself to be in these classrooms with professors that were trying to teach me businesses about business when they had never owned a business. They didn't write the book they were reading me. And I was actively losing money by sitting in this classroom. So I wanted to learn from people that were actually doing the work. I wanted to see how real operators ran businesses. And I worked in everything from healthcare to construction, and ultimately ended up in oil and gas, which I'm sure I'm predestined to do anyways. And I have 5 generations in oil and gas. So I was going to end up there one way or another. And that was kind of my first entry point into the private equity world. And I just saw a lot of, opportunities and conversations that I didn't necessarily agree with, that I wanted to change the narrative around. And so, doing 10 years of work for other people ultimately led me to go out on my own and start doing the work myself.
Boy, you have changed the narrative, Kelly Ann. It's absolutely inspirational to see the kind of impact that you have made for women-owned, women-operated businesses owned by people of color. It's just absolutely inspirational. And, many women cite money as their number one source of stress. It impacts their mental and emotional health. And it can be compounded by factors like inflation, economic instability, and the persistent gender pay gap. So how have you seen those kinds of factors impact the people that you serve? And how have you helped women overcome issues related to their own financial prowess, their financial management, and their ability to create legacy wealth?
I think that a big part of that is that we've been actively excluded from the conversation. I was fortunate enough to have 2 parents in the industry who openly talked about these things. But for most people, unless you're born into it, you're never having an honest, open conversation about money in the home. And the conversations that are being fed to the masses is very targeted towards educating men about how to invest, leverage credit, take risk. Whereas the conversation around money for women is how do you save? How do you budget? How do you spend? Credit cards are bad. Businesses are for the men. And so like this is the narrative that's being fed. So women, like it's okay that you have this little voice in the back of your head that says you can or you don't know what you're doing because it's been hardwired into you from the beginning of time. And unraveling that takes time and effort and louder voices. And so I wanted to be that louder voice of like, okay, it's okay you don't know, but here are the resources. So now you can't not know. And once you do know, you can do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that you've given women a pathway to actually invest, to actually take control of their financial wellness, to be able to create legacy wealth, if that is what they're interested in doing, is absolutely remarkable. You really are a trailblazer and a pioneer in this area. But I would say across the globe, women do make significant contributions to their families, their communities, their economies. And yet, as you noted, they continue to face unique challenges in achieving financial independence, whether it's because of, again, the gender pay gap or deep-rooted social norms or cultural attitudes. And sometimes it is limited access to financial education. But women often find themselves at a disadvantage when it comes to managing their money effectively and making smart investment decisions. So how have you seen that impact the people you serve, and how do you help them overcome any limitations to manage their money effectively and help them maximize the return on their investment?
I think representation matters, right? So like the financial services space, the industry in general, we're talking about advisors, CPAs, analysts, like anyone remotely related to the financial services space. Only 16% of those people are women or people of color. So like finding somebody who understands your walk of life is very difficult in this space. So when you have something that means a lot to you, it's hard to then convince, like, if you're a 50-year-old woman who's divorced, right, and you have your own independent wealth now, but you've only ever known Bob, the financial advisor, from your husband's golf game, right? You're now on your own to go find your own advisor. And if you have to go find another Bob, like trying to go into that conversation and be like, you know, this is my financial situation after my divorce, and these are my goals into, my next phase of life. And Bob is treating you the same way as, oh, still looking at you or speaking to you as John's ex-wife, even though he doesn't have that relationship. Like that is the experience women are having in these conversations. So it's very difficult to find an advisor or people that you can trust around you that understand what you're going through. And so what we try to do is be very relatable. We have people on our team that represent a lot of different demographics. Like I'm young, but I do understand, what older women are looking for because my mom is an older woman, right? And I have a relationship there. I have, someone who was on my team that's in that young Gen X age range. And I have a CFO that's a 60-something-year-old white guy, right? So it's all about having people around you that understand people's walk of life so that we can have honest conversations and actually understand where people are coming from.
I love that. And you're right, representation matters. And I would say that economic empowerment is not just about giving women access to money, right? That's not necessarily what I think women are looking for. It's about helping them achieve agency to control their own finances, to pursue their own goals, and to shape their own financial futures. And you're right. If they have access to people who understand their life stage, understand their life circumstance, that establish a trust-based relationship early, it becomes much easier to pursue their goals and to shape their own financial futures. Now, that's where I'm excited about the Women's Wealth Symposium, because that whole day is designed to equip women with the knowledge, the skills, the confidence that they need to make informed decisions about their finances, often through financial education and access to experts like you. So I have to ask you, what are you most excited about for the Women's Wealth Symposium coming up on March 8th?
I'm so excited for the energy of the space. I think when you have that many women and people that are supporting women in a room together, that it just kind of like buzzes like a beehive. And I feed off of that energy a lot, and it really keeps me inspired to keep doing what I'm doing. Because it creates a safe, I don't know how many, I mean, I think we've all experienced the difference between like a regular conference and like a women's focused conference, where I describe like the morning sessions at either one is like, one, everyone is still kind of like trickling in, getting coffee, where the women's is like a sound bath and like, an empowering, like get ready for the day moment. It's like a very different experience than most events that people, especially when it's like business or finance focused. It could be very stuffy, but I don't experience that in spaces where there's just a lot of energy.
Oh my gosh, I love that, Kelly Ann. Thank you. And you're right. At the Women's Wealth Symposium, I expect this to be an energized conversation. I expect there to be collaborations and partnerships and joint ventures that are created as we help women take back control of their personal finances and honestly help melt away any money stress that they could be facing. And as we celebrate International Women's Day, you, Kelly, have generously agreed to advance the cause of empowering women financially, not just on International Women's Day, but for you every single day of the year. And I am so incredibly grateful that you're carving out time to be with us on March 8th, because I believe that both you and I are striving for a more equitable world. We not only want to unlock the potential of half the population, but also cultivate a future where every single woman is financially empowered to pursue her dreams and shape her destiny. So, how do you think that an environment like that might impact even the community that you serve? You have on one side incredible investors who are trusting you with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your investment is now worth millions. And then also those people that you are directing that funding towards to help ensure that those businesses have the needed injection of capital to grow and scale and reach their purpose.
So one thing we need to keep in mind, and which is really important about having this conversation in March, is that the number that's growing for this great transitional wealth thing that's happening, it was like $60 trillion is going to the next generation. And it's gone up to, there's been numbers of high as $100 trillion part of this generational wealth transfer.
Yes.
And a majority of that is going to go to women. Not only are we a majority of the population by a slight number, we also outlive our partners and generally are a part of that kind of transition. So it's going to first go to the widows, which are typically the wives in these kind of wealth situations. And so educating the investor base as far as like what kind of responsibility that is, whether you're receiving $100,000 from an inheritance as part of that generational wealth transfer, or hundreds of millions of dollars as part of that generational wealth transfer. There's a responsibility for that capital. And if you aren't prepared, there's going to be a lot of people surrounding you, telling you what to do with that money. But at the end of the day, it's yours. It's your decision and your mission to move that money around the way that you want to see and affect change. So that's number one, is working on educating the masses to start moving money in a more effective way. And on the founder side is that, the way that we look at investment is we're looking for the people that are the most disruptive in a sustainable way, right? And sometimes I use this a narrative as they always say like, oh, well, there's no discrimination. We're just hiring the best person for the job, right? So this is also my response. Like, I don't have a gender mandate in my fund or in my investments. I'm just hiring the best person for the job. And on most occasion, that's a woman. And if it's not, then I buy the company and then now it's woman owned. So we're going into these industries where there hasn't been a lot of innovation, and it's because the demographic that's been participating has stayed the same for 200 years. So if we can offer a different perspective, we can find opportunities to grow those industries, those technologies, those products. And so like that's where we're trying to fit. And it helps to do that when you have an investor base that also supports that vision and goal.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Kelly Ann, as I've said before, you are one of the leaders that I admire and respect the most of everyone I've met in the last 5 years. You are truly an innovator, a trailblazer, a pioneer. You are smart, you are savvy, you are generous, you are kind. And so I have to ask you, what is the best leadership advice that you've ever received that you'd like to pass on to our audience?
Um, I think that you have to think of yourself, like you have to be able to put yourself in every position that you are a leader of. If you have to find a way to relate and experience the types of things that the people that you're trying to lead experience, because if you don't, then how are you supposed to lead them to what you perceive as a better situation, or guide them through challenges? Because there are things that I will never understand because of who I am, but it doesn't mean that I should have a closed mind about it. I should spend the time to get to understand what those potential challenges could be, and creating a space that people feel safe and comfortable of having those honest conversations. And at least in my space, because I do a lot of work and DEI and everything, like I have to be able to have uncomfortable conversations with people where they have to say like, this is the right and wrong way to address people. This is the right and wrong way to invest in something, because this is the way that it is affecting this community of people. And I think that that's the biggest issue that we've had, at least in DEI, is that it's been so like it's turned into a bad word, right? Because it's turned into like a shaming type thing. At least that's how they feel, right? Understanding how people feel about it, where you have the whole demographic that you're trying to change mindset around, um, where they feel like they're being demonized for not understanding, and we have to give them patience and grace to progress. And I think like that was what was missing. And so that my biggest piece of advice in that space is really to just have patience, grace, and open-mindedness when you're talking to people to change minds, and allow that space to be created. Like really, really focus on creating that safe space in your environment and whatever your environment is.
I love that. You're really talking about entering into every conversation, every relationship with a sense of respect and curiosity to recognize differences and explore where there may be synergies, where there may be alignment, even in those differences, and really entering that with a respectful sense of curiosity. But also you mentioned, the qualities of empathy that are so important. So even if you haven't done a particular job of an employee that you're overseeing, really being very empathetic to their situation and how they're balancing their duties and responsibilities, and really entering the conversation with a sense of empathy, respect, and curiosity it's brilliant. And that's absolutely, I think, the formula of any productive and positive relationship. So thank you. I have to tell you that Kelly Ann Winget is just one of the amazing speakers that you're going to hear at the Women's Wealth Symposium on March 8th. We're so happy that all of you have joined this impactful discussion today with Kelly Ann Winget about advancing financial freedom for women all around the world, provided by LeadHERship Global. If you want to learn more about the Women's Wealth Symposium, simply visit leadhershipglobal.com WWS event. So we can't wait to see you on March 8th and join us to take the next step in your journey to financial empowerment and freedom. Thank you.